No.
So we'll just, yeah, we're ticking away. We've got a new tape. We might come to the end of the tape and we'll just change it over, but it's no problem. Yeah, but so I think if you just for the documentation side of things, if you could just tell us what your name is and when you were born.
You just want me to speak naturally.
Just chat away, just as if you're talking to me.
Yeah, well, nice to meet you again. And I looked at your little thing there and I thought, well, the war's lasted 60 years ago. It was the war finished and all of a sudden somebody's coming to interview me. I said, I must have done something wrong. Well, I was born in Glasgow in 1922. My father and mother took my two brothers and I to Canada in 1928. I would think it was a long time to go because the Depression was on, so we came back in 1931. Went to school in Glasgow. Did the usual things that boys did, jumped dikes and things like that, and raked middens.
Where did you live?
In Govan Hill. We were actually brought up in Springburn, but because my mother got the house rent, there was no such thing as bought houses in those days. It was all kind of rented houses, maybe 3 and 6 months a week at a house. And so we bought up in Govan Hill. Started work when I was 14 years of age in the Scottish Farmers Dairy Company. In those days it was, the horse and carts were coming in, but previous to that it was all men with barrows. They pushed the barrows with milk down the streets, ringing bells. You had certain customers in the morning and you delivered the milk in the morning about 6 o'clock, so as people had fresh milk for their porridge before they went to work in the morning. Because in those days there was no fridges or anything like that.
Yeah.
If you got a pint of milk one day, it was sour the next.
Yeah.
Although there was different ways of keeping it cool. They would put it in a bucket of hot water and cold water, and open the window and put it out the window at night so as it would be still usable the next morning. So that later on we had horses and carts as well. So 5 o'clock some morning I'd be down there in a cold morning, shoeing horses with studs in them because they couldn't get up the hill where the stables were unless they had these studs in.
And the hoofs, yeah.
So that was all learning. You enjoyed it, it was a job and you thought the rest was working, because in those days in the 30s there was no work for anybody. You couldn't get into an engineering job unless your father or your uncle was speaking for you to start an apprenticeship.
I see.
So my career was in a dead-end job more or less. And then the war was coming along, but you're not even thinking about it. You're 17 years of age and you say, oh well, that won't worry me, I'll never be there.
Yeah. What do you mean the war was coming along? Was there
Well,
happening that were...
Yes, because what was happening in 1939, there were some of the workers there were in the Territorial Army, because it was a way of getting 2 weeks free holiday. They get paid for their weekends, they're paid pittance, but they get 2 weeks summer holidays. So before the war started, these people get called up, which left a scarcity of men in the dairy. So I knew then, because I was somebody, the boss would say, oh, Bill so-and-so is going away, you'll need to do his run for the next 2 weeks. So I began to think, well, that's the war starting, but it's not going to worry me. And even when 39, when the war started, and I still never thought anything about it. But one day, it must have been 1940 after Dunkirk, I'm down at Cathcart Road and I heard these bands playing. I said, what the devil's this? And it was all the French soldiers that had been evacuated from Dunkirk were marching up Cathcart Road with their big bugles and horns, and they came to the recreation ground down there in a tented camp for them. And I thought, God, that war's getting nearer.
You started to, aye.
Yes,
so these were French, the French army who had been evacuated.
Yeah, they had been evacuated in Dunkirk as well, you see, so they were spreading them all over the country. And I said, my God, the French are up here, this is bad. So, when I was 19, you had to go in what they called register for service. When you had your 19th birthday, you went down to the halls in the the south side of the city.
Yeah. Sorry, it just occurred to me to switch my phone off in case it goes off. I'll just switch it off. Hold on. I heard the beeping there. That's it off. Right.
Yeah, and
Sorry.
you gave me your date of birth and they put you through a medical.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether I was lucky or not, but I passed my medical and I was a 6-stone weakling, I think, by that time. So that was it. Had your medical. They asked you what you prefer to be in, Army, Air Force or Navy. And I said the Navy. So as usual thing, you don't get what you wanted anyway. Finished up in that. 6 months later I got called up to the Army.
So you were actually called up then?
Yes, I was called up.
This was a registration?
October 1941 I was called up.
Right.
And there was still not much doing at that time.
Mm-hmm.
The Americans hadn't come into the war.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't come in till Christmas. It was a stalemate in Europe. They weren't coming here and we weren't going across there.
Mm-hmm.
So I was called up to the 38th Signal Training Regiment at Redford Barracks in Edinburgh. I thought, well, this is quite good. I've never seen Edinburgh before, and I stayed in Glasgow. I'm 19 years of age, I'm beginning to see part of the world. So, done my training as a signal wireless operator and things like that, and went out in exercises. And I said, my God, what's all that water? It was the North Sea. I'd never seen the North Sea before. I said, this is getting better. I'm seeing places now that I've never seen before. So after the 3-month training, we were sent down to a London regiment, stationed at Herne Bay in Kent. Moved from there to West Wickham in Kent. Went for a while there, doing exercises, but nothing was really happening. There was nothing. Then all of a sudden, we were getting sent home on leave. And there was only 7 Scotsmen went down to join that regiment from a signal training regiment. So it was an English regiment, not even English, a Cockney regiment, because they were real Londoners, territorial army unit. And with them listening to our Scottish accents and us trying to understand their Cockney accents, my God, it was. So, sent home on leave. Well, I said, I had 2 weeks leave, but it was called embarkation leave. We went back, got issued with khaki shirts and topies that you don't see nowadays, but in the old days they used to wear them in the desert. As soon as we got out there, we threw it away anyway, because they were too awkward to carry.
Are these the hats with the peak and the...
Peak that, yes, that's right. You see about in the old Indian frontier days, you know. So we were 7 weeks on the boat, left the Clyde on the SS Mexico, and I thought, this is a big ship. It's 10,000 tons. It was a mail ship between Cuba and New York, and had 3,000 troops on it. There were in hammocks. There was officers were built, but we were down below in the hold, and there was hammocks, 1, 2, 3. And if anything had ever happened to that ship, there was nothing you could have done about it, you know. It was run by Americans. Left the Clyde in May 42. Big convoy, sailed out, stopped at Creetown, never got off the ship. They just stopped there to refuel. Then they sailed right away down to South Africa. Some of the ships stopped at Cape Town, some stopped at Durban. So we got ashore at Durban. We were there for 4 days while they refueled and replenished stocks and water and everything like that. And when we were on the ship, there was people on the quayside holding big banners up. Hamilton, Glasgow, Edinburgh. People who had emigrated out there. And if you went off the ship, if you were, come up, they took you out to your house and wined them and dined them. And I thought, this is fantastic, you know. And it was only later on that somebody said, the reason these people are doing that is because they're looking for white immigrants after the war. Because they had known what was happening as early as those days. In Jan Smuts we had South African divisions fighting with us, and it was whites against the blacks. They were looking to build up the white population. So we left it after 4 days. We were up to the Suez Canal and up into the desert. That would be maybe almost near the end of June.
42.
42.
So this was into Egypt then, aye?
And then the war in the desert was up and down for a couple of years. They'd done 1,000 miles up there as far as Gala. Then they found that the big long supply lines the Germans would build up, they would chase them back to the Egyptian frontier. And they would run out of ammunition and things, and we would build, they would chase them back again. So when we got out there, inexperienced troops, but we thought we were well trained. What we'd done there, but going out to the desert, everything was different. In Britain we had motorbikes for the Donars. You couldn't use a motorbike in the desert, so we had to wait for to get jeeps and some different things like that. And at night, the Germans had been coming down there before El Alamein. There was 2 actual battles. There was one. They knew the Germans were coming right down there. They couldn't stop them, so they built. The strongest point they could get was between El Alamein and about 30 miles south. There's a place called Qattara Depression. It's impassable for lorries and heavy goods vehicles. So there was more or less, it was a front only going to be about 25, and that was the strongest position they could get. They knew that the Germans would have to come to attack them in that position, and we had the strength there. So they had all these different ideas of building different gun pits and going out at night and camouflaging vehicles, cardboard vehicles, and build gun pits, put big camouflage nets over it. And you know the big cardboard pieces you see inside cardboard and linoleum? They had them sticking out the front, painted as if it was the muzzle of a gun. This was to fool the Germans. Well, the first action we ever seen was a Stuka bombers dived this, and they never went to all the dummy guns. They came to the real ones, and it was chaos. Within 5 minutes there was, I can't remember, it was quite a lot of people killed there. And we're supposed to be experienced troops, we never had a clue. We never even had stretchers to take the wounded back to the regimental post. We were carrying them in pieces of corrugated iron, and the corrugated iron was biting into your hands while you were carrying them. And I thought, that was good. The following week in the newspaper, 8th Army News, desert-wise new boys told us how good we were. And we never had a clue. So that was kind of first time. So there was a build-up for the next 2 months until El Alamein came, and it was 51st Highland Division had come out, and Montgomery had taken over from Auchinleck and things like that. But they changed all the old tanks into new tanks from America and things like that. So we knew that then it was going to be a battle, and it looked as if we were going to win it because we had 3-to-1 manpower for tanks and everything else. So it started on the 23rd of October, El Alamein. 9:40 at night, 20 minutes to 10 at night. And although I wasn't a gunner, I was an observation post signaller. So I was never really on the gun sites, I was always up at an observation post. And we had to give the guns, well we never gave the instruction because everybody knew 9:40, fire. And the whole place was ablaze with gunfire. Must have been 1,000 guns all fired at the one time. Light guns, 25-pounders, medium guns, heavy guns, all at the one time. Must have lasted for maybe 2 hours. And we're sitting in a dugout, the slit trench up beside this minefield. We had a Bren carrier with us, with the old P truck. That was it. The battle raged for maybe 2 weeks. I thought it was going to be a week before we broke through. It was over 2 weeks before they broke through. And we didn't go any further in the advance because they realised mistakes they'd made when sending everybody in, chasing Germans. It was all fuel and ammunition. So they sent, I think it was three divisions, maybe the 51st Highland Division, 50th Tyneside and Teesside, they came from Newcastle, and the 7th Armoured Division. They were called the Desert Rats because their insignia on their thing was a jerboa, which was the little rats that run about the desert. So that was it. So the battle raged on. We were sitting behind there enjoying ourselves, doing nothing. All of a sudden, pack up. We went up to Benghazi because the port, they'd taken the port by that time, and that was nearer a place where you could get your fuel and everything, ammunition. Normally, the last twice that they had been up the desert before, the fighting stopped at a place called Eligela. But this time, the British First Army and Americans had landed in North Africa.
Oh, okay, this was
So I think
for the other end, aye.
that was the other end. So I think the Germans said, well, we're going to get caught down here. So they built other battle fronts. I think the first one was Medellin, Wadi Akarit, and another one. They had all these defensive positions, same as El Alamein, between Mata Mountains on one side and the sea on the other.
Yeah.
So that was quite another good few battles there before we got through them. And of course, I think the right was involved. There was two armies coming from either side. We went away up and we stopped into Tunisia. And the fighting stopped there at a place called Infideville. And that was a capital. So the war in the desert was finished. I think as far as we're concerned, that's the war over.
Yeah.
But they had been thinking already about invading Sicily and other places.
But when would this be about now? We're into, this was 1943.
This being May 43.
Yeah.
So we went back to Tripoli. And we were there for maybe the whole of June, July, August. Swimming in the sea, training, getting all your wireless sets all geared up again, all the vehicles getting maintained. And they took the brain carrier off us and gave us a tank for our OP party.
Yeah.
So we spent days down at the beach.
Your job then, you were a forward.
Yes, I was a forward observation post signalling.
So you were supposed to direct gunfire and.
That's correct.
In
We were always up with the infantry.
Yeah.
You were in liaison with an infantry battalion commander. If they wanted support, they would say fire such and such, and we would give them the angles of sight and all the calibers where the guns were wanting to fire. So they gave us this tank, so we had to go down to the beach every day and do exercises there. This amphibious exercises, when you've got a tank, if you see some of these Indian shops and catering places, they've got to have a big thing at the back where the fumes and everything go up in the air. Well, we had one of them on the back because if you go into the water, to stop the water getting into the engine, they had these funnels on it.
Right.
So we're in this and this is a great time of year. And end of August, we embarked on a ship. The rest of there were no guns. It was our OP party with our tank and a squadron of the Scots Grace on this LST and some infantry. I don't know what the infantry were, but and by this time Sicily was taken.
Right, yeah.
I said, we're doing all this training, amphibious exercises, and we're going to Sicily. We don't need it now. So while we were on board ship, we didn't know where we were going. Nobody told us where we were going. Not even the captain of the ship didn't know you either. There's 3rd of September, the 8th Army crossed the Straits of Messina into Italy. And of course we'd heard this in the ship. I says, God, where are we going? We're going to miss out on things here. But little did we know, as we further out in the Mediterranean we got, there was ships coming from Oran and Algiers and these places. This other big convoy that was forming up. So you're looking about and you're saying, battleships, what's going on? We all seem to know. And the day before we got there, the Italian government capitulated. On the 8th of September, they signed an armistice. And we heard this on board ship. We're saying, oh, you beauty. The war's finished, the Italians have given in. So they did, but the Germans didn't give in. So next morning at 2:30 in the morning, we landed on a beach at Salerno. That was the 9th of September. It was a part of an American Army force, 5th Army. General Mark Clark, he was in charge of the landings. There was the the division I was with, the 56th Division, they had a black cat insignia because it was a London division and it was supposed to be Dick Whittington's cat. It says that was their insignia. And it was the 46th Division. They came from Nottingham. They had a big tree, Sherwood Forest.
Oh, right, yeah, Sherwood, Robin Hood and all that.
There was 2 divisions of Americans, some Royal Marine Commandos and some US Rangers. So we landed at the beach, nothing happening. I said, this is great, the war's finished. And we had a problem. You've got to get this big funnel off the back before you go in, because the engine overheats if you don't get it off. And it's supposed to be coming off easy. They couldn't get it off to get a build. I didn't know. I was inside with the headphones on. But the officer and the driver, they jumped out and away they went to get a bulldozer with a big chain on it. Threw this chain over it, and I'm inside with the headphones on. They pulled this thing off and the tank went like that. And I'm inside. I said, God, what the hell's happening here? So they come in again, it's okay with me. Landing was easy. Within a week, we're almost getting pushed back into the sea. The Germans had come up there with their guns and everything else. They seemed to know what was happening, but they let us come ashore. And we were on a riverbed. We were supporting the 6th Battalion Grenadier Guards, part of the 201 Guard Brigade. That was another brigade that was there. Then we're in the riverbed. Our major who was commanding the tanks, he knew this colonel before. Well, the major, second in command of the Grenadiers, because they called themselves by first names. Hugh and David, that was what they called David, or Hugh. And this second in command of the Guards was one of these people that must have inspired all his men, because he never had a helmet on. He walked about with his beret and one of these fly swishes that they had in the desert, never changed, walked about saying that this and big moustache, whatever. So he came back to us, Russia. He says, look, you need to get back. We're getting pushed back. We'll be going to retreat. Move your tank, move your observation post down the riverbed. And one of the things that we got taught, we had this tank, but the driver was told, never show the rear of your tank to the enemy, because that's the most vulnerable part of your tank. It's the back. So this driver of the tank, he turned this tank round, and the major was furious. I just forget his name, this tank driver. What are you doing? You'll never shoot, he says. We're getting off, sir. And he flew down, we could hear it was a dry riverbed, and we could hear, before we could hear these tanks coming down the riverbed, the big tiger tanks with the tracks on the dry stones, you know.
Yeah, the German tanks.
So that was it. We got back to the beach and things were pretty desperate there for about 10 days. And I don't know whether you've ever known, there was a mutiny there.
This is the 8th Army, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
what happened, because things were getting a bit of trouble, there was lots of people in Algiers who had been on sick leave, wounded and things like that. So they put them on a boat to send them out as reinforcements to Salerno. But when they heard they weren't going back to their own regiment, they refused to fight. So they put them in barbed wire cages on the beach and charged them with mutiny. And a couple of days later they said, well look, everybody that wants to go to these new units we're posting you to, as soon as this battle is over, we'll get you back to your own regiments. So half of them said, right, that's fine. But the other half didn't, and they were sent back to Algiers. And they were tried, and some of them were sentenced to firing squad. But none of them were actually shot, because I'm an officer in the background. You can't do this. These guys were told they were going to their own regiments, faults on either side. They were prepared to fight. They went to their own regiment, they were prepared to go back and join them, but they weren't. So that. Anyway, the 8th Army had come up by that time from Sicily, so that was all over. That was the Battle of Salerno. But there were so many minor battles after that. You don't. They're in the history books. But every river you came to was an obstacle. In October and November, all these rivers were in spate. So the Germans had everything in their favour going back the way. Because you had engineers going up there trying to build bridges across the thing with raging torrents. The first one was a river called Volturno, which was just at Naples. And it took for weeks to go after that. And up to Capio, Caserta. Then the next line was the casino front. That was the Garigliano was the name of the river. It joined the Rapido in front of Casino. The Rapido joined the Garigliano, and that's. This time it's November, torrential rain, mud. We've got a tank, it's no damn good to us. No good in the desert, but no good in mountains. So by the time that time came, everything was carrying your back. A wireless set, there was new wireless sets, like number 21 came out. It was light, but when I say light, it still weighed about 40 pounds. And as well as the wireless set, you had a 12-volt battery for the power for it. So one was carrying the wireless set and somebody else was carrying a battery, as well as your rifle, your backpack and everything else to climb up mountains with these guards brigade that we were with. And you would be up for 24 hours back, up for another 24 hours, get relieved back. And it lasted for, I could say weeks, maybe it was 6 or 7 weeks up there. The guns were firing, but our troops couldn't get up to the top of the mountain. It was called Monte Cassino. Cassino was on the one side, and this was another range of hills. Monte Cassino, the whole way down to the shore, which was all American troops there. Well, except for the 2nd Battalion, Camerons and stuff like that. They were with the 4th Indian Division. So you had a New Zealand Division, South African Division, Canadian Division, Polish Division. There was an array of different troops. You had a Jewish brigade, a brigade from Cyprus. It was like all different nationalities. The South Africans, everything was there on that side of the front, and they all had a go at taking Casino, and it was just throwing lives away. And they just said, look, we're going to leave it until the springtime. But the powers that be must have thought, no, we've got to get this done. So one time I came back from the OP and I felt there was something wrong with me, but cold or something. And we just came back. We had dugouts by that time because it was, if you're in a position for 5 or 6 weeks, instead of a slip trench, guys get burying holes and putting sandbags on top of it so you can go in below and you'll get shelter at night time. And I woke up next morning, I still had my greatcoat on that I come down this mountainside with. And I was shivering like anything. The chap says, you need to go to medical orderly. I said, no, not bother. So in the afternoon, he said, have you been to the doctor? I said, no, I'll shake it off. He said, get to the doctor. So I went to the doctor and took my temperature and stuff like that. He said, oh, fuck. It's away sky high. So you better go back and get your small pack with your toothbrush and shaving gear. So when I left his tent, I must have only gone 100 yards. I collapsed. So I finished up, I don't know what happened. I finished up in what they call the casualty clearing station. You went from your own medical order to a first aid post, then from a first aid post to a casualty clearing station where the wounded went to. And I woke up in this place with these wounded guys in it. I was in a stretcher with on top of 4 petrol cans raised off the ground. I had malaria. I didn't even know what it was. Must have contacted it there. Sent me back to the hospital in Naples. I was in there for a week. Maybe 10 days. Came out and I'm in a hospital and there's guys there that have lost legs and everything else, and I'm saying, what am I doing in here? And they sent me back to a place called Sorrento. It's a now big fashionable holiday resort south of Naples, to a convalescent camp which was taken over a hotel, and that was superb. So the fighting was going on, and Anzio had taken place by this time, the 22nd of January. Went into Anzio.
This is into 1944 now, yeah.
Yeah, I just got up and I'm thinking, well, I've gone back to my regiment. I went to this, what they call the transit camp. You go there while you're waiting to go back to your unit. Got new gear because I'd lost everything, new blankets, everything else. So I felt a millionaire again. And went down to a little port called Torre in Annunziata, which is just south of Naples. Boarded a landing craft there. Went up to Anzio. Now this would be the end of January, 7 days after, because they were in the same state there. They thought they were going to push on to Rome, and it became that they had enough strength to beat the Germans, and the Germans never enough strength to push us back into the sea.
Yeah, bottled up.
So I was in Anzio from there until the end of May. Go there for 4 months, up to the OPs every day, back again, up, ranging guns, printing targets. Maybe one number one gun, you see it firing 100 yards, right, such and such. Then you mark that in the plan. If anything ever happened and you seen Germans and that, instead of having to work out the angle of sight, you just said plan B, fire, and 4 guns would fire on that target without giving any instructions, because they had it down the side of their guns, you know. Anyway, the breakout came from Anzio, and that was end of May. And well, Rome was a big target supposed to be, but different generals had different ideas. The American that was in charge, General Mark Clark, he wanted the glory of taking his American troops into Rome. Switched it in, and we never seen Rome. We just bypassed it up to the next battlefields that were gone further north. The Gothic Line battle started after that. And we did get leave at Christmas time. We went back to Rome for 6 weeks. And it was really brilliant because to put you in a picture, when we were in Tripoli, it was an Italian colony, because the Italians had populated Libya and Tripolitania. So most of the people there spoke Italian, and we were living in this Italian farm. And it's amazing how you can pick up, at your age, darling, you can pick up languages like that when you're young. And I picked up a bit of Italian. We landed at Salerno. There was never any fighting in towns. Our fighting was all down the countryside at farms where there's Italian families that you're living with. And you picked up more and more as we went on. So I was over 3 years in Italy, so I was quite, not say proficient, but broken Italian. But it was good enough to get me past everything. So going back to Rome at Christmas was great. 6 weeks in Rome. It was great, ticking all the barracks.
So you have a very favourable impression of the Italian people then?
Oh,
I mean, even though technically they were the enemy.
I love the Italians. I've been back so many times on holiday there, and the only thing is I'm just sorry I never kept, because there was no addresses. You're out in the country, you wouldn't even know the name of the village you were in. There was only one place I did remember, and I went back to it and I hardly recognised the place. It was 1961, so it was 15 years after the war finished, and I hardly recognised the place I was in because it was a wartime thing and it had been rebuilt at that time. So that was the story. That then it was up to the next battlefronts were up to the north of Florence, and there's a place there that doesn't get the same publicity as Cassino. There's a book up the stairs about it. You can maybe take that with you and have a read of that. It's called The Cassino of the North. And it's near a place called San Marino, which is an independent republic in Spain, in Italy. And so that was the whole of that winter. 44 was spent up there before the breakthrough. And I forgot to, when I did go from the hospital to Anzio, I didn't go back to my own regiment.
Oh, right.
I was put in a transit camp and sent to this other regiment because they were short of signallers. And I went up to the major I was speaking to, a chap that I got to know very well over the years called Jimmy Dow. He was the adjutant. And I said, look, I'm supposed to go into my own regiment. He said, well, you're sent here. He says, go down to A Troop, see how you feel about it. If you want to go back now, we're going to reach time, we'll see if we can get you back. But you need to be here just now because we need signallers down at the command post there. So I was down there 3 or 4 days, a Scotch regiment. Now here I had been with an English regiment for 18 months. It took me all my time to understand them, and then with us. And I walked into this place, and the first thing this chap says to me, oh, where are you from? I said, Glasgow. Oh, are you Rangers or Celtic? I says, no, I'm third Lanark. This is a local football team in Govan Hill. Oh, he says, the other half of your supporters are here. There was one other third Lanark supporter in that troop, and we hit it off. So this Major Edbeeds I had been with at Salerno, he heard that I was up because I spoke to some of the boys, my old regiment was there, and he sent for me. And Jimmy Dow came up and says, do you know Major Edbeeds? I says, yes. He says, been here asking for you, you want to come back, he wants you back. I said, well, I'm staying here. And I was with that Scottish horse from then right up to the present day. We still have our regimental reunions every year in Dunkeld. The Scottish horse is not a well-known regiment that came in with a black watch or anything like that. There was only 2 regiments during the war. They were founded by the Duke of Atholl. Which, if you've ever been in Scotland up to Blair Castle, that's his home. And they had founded in the Boer War. The Duke of Atholl's son had the title of Marquess of Tullibardine. So the general out there asked the Marquess of Tullibardine to come back to Scotland and see if he could get a mounted regiment to send out to South Africa. And being Blair Atholl, everybody up there was all farmers and estate workers, they'd all be used to horses. So they formed the Scottish Horse in South Africa. They had about 4 regiments in the First World War. Disbanded when the First World War finished. Started as territorials. They had horses right up until June 1940. The horses were taken away, they were mechanised into this artillery. And that was a Scottish horse. In fact, if you'd like to give me that cap across there, there's a berry there. It's the most distinguished. Most Scottish regiments have got Balmorals, Glengarrys and things like that. Now that is called an Atholl bonnet. It's an Atholl bonnet, and that's the regimental badge of a Scottish horse.
Oh yeah.
You see it says South Africa 1901, 1902.
Yeah, that's the, just can you see the wee badge there, eh?
So, that's the original bonnet that I got in 1944.
Goodness. Oh, that's the old Salter Cross, eh?
Yeah.
South Africa, eh?
And that's my heirloom for the war. That and five medals on a thing, and then only campaign medals. So no heroism, no military crosses, or so that was that. So that was my story of the war.
Yeah. So you what was you going to say? You worked your way up through. You're basically from Egypt all the way across to Tripoli, into Italy, and all the way up to the Alps, up to San Marino.
We were on the Adriatic when the war finished.
Right.
And the Germans capitulated in Italy. But a month before the war finished, our colonel was killed. He was shot by a sniper. And if he hadn't been killed, he would have been the Duke of Atholl.
All right.
So because he was killed, the title went to his son, who was the Duke of Atholl up until about 5 years ago, but then he died. So it goes to a cousin in South Africa that's got in there.
Comes all the way round.
So, and
So
the Duke of Atholl still has its little private army up there. It's known as the Atholl Highlanders.
yeah.
They don't carry rifles anymore. They're not allowed to carry rifles. So they're on parade up there for a ceremonial thing for visitors and things like that. But that's where we go for our reunions every year.
Yeah.
Go up there. There's not that many of us left now.
So you were in the Adriatic, so that's what,
Yes.
Croatia? Or?
Well, we moved from after Anzio, we went up to Florence. So the 8th Army went back to being the 8th Army again, and the 5th Army was on that side there. But it was kind of stalemate because the Americans decided they were going to land in southern France. They wanted that, and there was 2 divisions of French troops that joined us from Algiers. So there was 4 divisions went to south of France, and there was no way they could attack these battles up there with 4 divisions less than they had to fight the other way. So it was a kind of stalemate from then on.
Yeah, I see.
The last big battle was at that Germano, this place called Germano. That's the Adriatic of the north.
Yeah, where is Germano? Is that?
It's beside what's the name of the place?
San Marino.
San Marino.
Aye.
It's that same big mountain range.
Right. Okay. So
That's where the last battles were fought. My 2 cousins, they were with the Canadians, and they were both killed there.
Really?
I've had my other cousins, their sisters come here. I've taken them back to the cemeteries and seen the cemetery along with his mother and father and things like that.
Yeah. So, but now we're into the end of 44, aye. This would be, or even into 45, aye.
Well, it was April 45, and for all the fighting across rivers were always the toughest things to go. And the biggest river in Italy was the River Po. And we thought, what's going to happen here? This is the widest one.
Yeah, it's flat there, isn't
By
it?
the time we got up to the River Po, the Germans had flown across it and left all their horses and everything behind, all their ammunition. And all these chaps in the north of Scotland that we used to call it Chuchters, from Elgin and all the Highland places, they were riding these horses bareback and we couldn't go on one. So we moved back to a place called Riccione, and they brought all these Russian prisoners who had been fighting for the British.
Right.
They'd left the Russians, and they were fighting against the Russians in Prussia, these places.
Right.
And they were put in these prisoner of war cages, maybe there 5 or 6 weeks. There was a big diplomatic thing about it. The Russians wanted them handed over to the Russians. And the British didn't want to hand them over because they knew if they were handed over, they were going to shoot them all for fighting against them. So there was some brigadier was into it, and it lasted a long, long time, but eventually they were let go. But years later, half of those people were never seen again. They reckon they were sent to Silesia and these places, you know.
Yeah. I think they were Tartars, is that right? I think they were Tartars.
No, they weren't Tartars.
They had a...
There was a name for them. They were Russians, but they weren't living. They were maybe in Romania or Bulgaria or some of these places and defected over to the other side.
They were a minority group, weren't they, or some
Yeah.
sort of, I'm not very sure of the details.
Well, that was the war was over, so I'd been away overseas for 3.5 years. I left in May 42, and this was July 45. I came home and leave by truck, 3-ton lorries. They took us up to Bologna, and we piled into these 3-ton lorries. 12 people in every lorry. They put in wooden seats on either side. There were 6 on either side. 12 people in the truck, and we moved from first place we stopped at Klagenfurt. I think there were 7 or 8 stops on the way home. They were pretty well organised. Into the trucks in the morning. They stopped at a certain place for lunch. And the next place you stopped, maybe a schoolroom. They had a place for 100 soldiers sleeping there for the night, had their food, moved on next day to a different place, right through to Cali, came home. Father met me at the station. My mother greeted me. My father said, what the hell have you done with yourself? You were skinny enough when you went in, look at you now. That was it. I came home. While I was home, I was going back to Italy, because we were going back there and we were getting sent to the Far East, because the war was still going on in the Far East.
Finish off the Japanese, yeah.
And while I was home and leave, the atom bomb dropped. So I had my passage to go back to Italy. Went back to Italy in September 1945, and I was there until October 1946, the year after the war finished. With nothing to do. We were stationed in San Remo. We used to go across the frontier. We couldn't go into Monaco because they wouldn't allow you in there with uniforms. We had to bypass and go down to Nice, come back in and we used to take the coffee, the rice from Italy into France and bring coffee back from France into Italy. With all the money you could spend, nothing to do. I was sorry to get put out of the army. Anyway, that was my story of my life in the army. Got demobbed and had to go back to work. But this time they're 5 years older. And there was a law that the firm you were employed with had to take you back and give you a job. They couldn't say there's no job for you. They had to give you a job, but it didn't have to be the same one as you had before. So I started as a canvasser. All these new housing estates were getting built, Pollock and Castlemilk and all these places. Round doors chatting, you moving in, would you like the milk delivered? And get your milk 2 pints a day, such and such. It was on my wage plus commission. I've done that a good number of years. Then I thought, if I'm doing this, I may as well open my own place. So I opened a dairy down in Pays Road West at Cardonald. Had that for 25 years until I retired. I sold it to a chap that's got a group of shops, Henry Healy. Got shops in the town. He wanted a site, so I sold it to him 19 years ago. And he said, well, there was one clause in it. He wanted in for the Christmas rush. And my wife and I always went to Spain every November anyway. So I said, right, you can have it next week. No hurry. I put everything at 20% off and I never looked in that shop again. So I've had 19 years of retirement.
Wonderful.
So
you must have.
That's the story of my life in the army. So you're going to ask me some questions about other things.
Well, that's really what I'm looking for. Just to try to. Yeah, I think it's kind of got most of the points, the chronology there. Just one of the things I've been talking to about what I've been interested in about the Italian campaign is, people tend to think Italy is a very warm and sunny place, but I don't believe that was how it was when you're working your way up the leg.
Well, we landed at the wrong time, really.
Yeah.
October, the rain started in Italy. I suppose if they'd landed there and if it hadn't taken them so long, they thought they would just go through Sicily. They went through Sicily in a few weeks. They'd had a better chance of going over these hills where they're dry. But once the rains came, it was onto a sticky wicket there.
It was so it wasn't you said you had a tank, but it wasn't a very mechanised war. It was very much foot soldiers, wasn't it?
Oh yes, well the tanks were just. I used to feel sorry for some of these anti-tank guys. In different places now, especially that Garigliano and that Monte Cassino, because there was no tank war, they had these regiments of anti-tank gunners. They couldn't do anything. So they used them as carriers for helping us up with our stuff up in the mountains. And they had these Indians with mules taking supplies of ammunition up to the infantry up the hills. And these guys with the anti-tank guns, they were thinking this is going to be a good time here, nothing for us to do. So they put them onto carrying stuff up on the mountainside in that weather. And it's hard to believe, unless when you think before a battle, or even minor skirmishes at night time, people had gone up just to do a wee foraging place, see if they could take a couple of prisoners. In mud and rain, maybe 100 infantrymen going out at night time. And they're behind the lines actually, no, they're not in the front line all the time, you're only in so long up there. The Royal Army Service Corps would bring these soldiers up in the back of a lorry to what they call the starting line, and then they would walk the next mile to the front. And you used to, and sitting, we were sitting in our rain car, or whatever we had, the white scout car they gave us, and seen these guys at 10 o'clock at night, ploughing through mud, even before they got to the start line. They had a mile to walk through mud and rain and everything before they even got to start the fighting. You don't think of that at the time. You think everybody's just sitting there waiting to say, if somebody say, right, come on, that's us, let's go. I had this before it. And you always get your tot of rum, and we get the tot of rum every time the infantry get a tot of rum, we get the rum as well.
Well, it's, yeah, I think there's a quote in this book, I believe it's by, I think it's an American general who compared it to Passchendaele. He said a lot of the time it was like the wars of, like the First World War, the mud and so on. Yeah. It's quite unlike the...
Well, I don't think anything could be as bad as that First World War, really.
Imagine that, yeah.
I mean, the casualties were pretty heavy there, but nothing to what they were in the First World War.
Yeah. No, it's must have been something else. You mentioned, another thing I've read is that there was a great number of foreign nationalities involved.
Yeah.
You encountered a lot of them, did you?
Oh, they were great.
Yeah.
The Indians were great.
Aye.
They had so much animosity against England and Pakistanis and Gurkhas and the Indians. They were with us in the desert as well, because they were one of the old established divisions out in the desert. They were sent to quell Eritrea. Mussolini lost, well, his first part of the empire was down in the Suez Canal, Eritrea, and it was the 4th Indian Division. They were in action all the time, and that's where the 2nd Camerons were. When we went after they landed in Italy, and after about 4 or 5 months in Italy, that whole division went back to the Middle East to rest, because they'd been fighting the whole way without rest, the whole way through the desert, Sicily, Italy. Instead of taking them back for a month, they sent them right away back to Egypt for a good rest. Then they came back into the war again.
And did they, I mean, it strikes me as amazing that, you know, Indians who, you know, what did they think they were doing fighting against Germans in Italy? Did they were willing, they were...
Well, the Indian Army was always a strong British army. But although it's the 4th Indian Division, every brigade has got 3 battalions in it. 2 Indian battalions and 1 British. And all your officers in the Indian were all British officers.
I see.
The officers were all British, the soldiers were ORs.
But they were, yeah. Did you mention Poles? There was a Polish brigade.
General Anders. Yeah.
Yeah. They were supposed to have been particularly...
Well, the Poles were the one that took they were the ones that got the credit for taking Cassino at the end of the day, although all these other troops had lost so many men on it, but they were the ones that... There was the French Alpine troops as well there, General Juan. And behind, you don't know at the time, but in behind the scenes, all these generals that are speaking their minds to one another, were doing their own thing, Freyberg and the New Zealanders, they must have lost 1,000 men in the Battle of Cassino Town alone, never mind in the Battle of the Town. And they've all got their different opinions, and after the war finished, you're reading these books and saying, why didn't somebody tell us at the time what was happening?
It's, the casino, the monastery casino itself, is it correct that it wasn't actually garrisoned by the Germans originally?
No, well, they still maintained the abbot that was there. The Germans there took all the artifacts away, all the old relics away, and I think there was only about 3 or 4 young priests left in the monastery. They took them all away back on the road to Rome, all the lorries and all the stuff in it. And assuming there was nobody in it.
But,
although, if you're down below and you're looking at that thing and somebody's firing guns at you all the time, you're saying they're up there.
Yeah.
Although you couldn't see them, they were built into the sides of
Yeah.
the hills.
Because it was, I think it was bombed, wasn't it?
Yeah, it
by
was.
the United States Air Force.
Well, it was bomb. It was flying fortresses and everything like that that came down to bomb it.
Yeah.
And that was, they could have maybe bombed that 2 months before it, but different generals didn't want it bombed.
Yeah.
There was a General Matt Clark, he was Catholic. They didn't want to upset a lot of other people that were fighting like that about bombing a monastery because it was so anti this. But eventually they must have all got together and said, okay, what are you doing? You're going to leave it there and have 1,000 men dying every day, or are we going to bomb it? So eventually it was bombed and that was it. But, have you been to Monte Cassino?
I haven't.
You haven't been to it?
I'd certainly. I'd say I intend to visit it. It's one of the reasons I'd like to. I can show you in a wee minute the photographs we have here. But yeah, I'd like to visit it. As I say, it was, to remind you, it was my mother's uncle who was there. He was
Yes,
in the. Actually, I have his thing here. What is it? This is Alexander Docherty McCall. This is an extract from the Commonwealth War Graves Commission. So he was in the 2nd Battalion, Queen's Own Cameron Highlands.
Yeah, because that's a battalion that was with the 4th Indian Division, you see.
Ah, yeah.
But this is not his grave then, no.
No, that isn't.
No, because it was got the names are on the grave, and
Yeah.
they have the crest of the badge, the Cameron's badge on it.
I'll show you. This is the. I had a cousin who visited the grave. I think it was last year.
Yeah, that's all the graves are like that. Our ones have got the Scottish Horse badge on them.
Ah, yeah. This is similar. Almost St Andrew's Cross. So it's very, very well kept, isn't it?
Oh,
Yeah.
funny, but I was at one of those graves in Italy one time.
Yeah.
With my cousins.
Yeah.
And it was, we'd taken flowers, buckets of flowers up with us. And I said to the gardener that was there, in Italian, I said, excuse me, have you got a vase or a urn that we could put these flowers in beside my cousin's grave?
Aye.
And they said, and later on I spoke to him down below, and he says, what you speak to me in Italian for? He said, I'm British. He was with the British War Graves Commission,
Ah, yeah.
working out in the graves.
Oh, right, I see.
Yes,
Yeah.
oh, they're beautifully kept.
Yeah, it's, I've not been to Italy. I was up in France at one time. I was near Verdun,
Yeah.
and I visited one of the graveyards there. Very well looked after.
But did I tell you we're going out there in 3 weeks' time?
Yeah, aye, yeah. Well, that'll be very interesting. You've been before, of course, haven't you?
Yeah, I've been quite a few
Aye.
times. Yes. Every time I keep going to say this is the last time,
Aye.
but this is definitely the last.
Yeah. No, it must be. It's obviously been quite a thing. Did you touched a wee bit about when you got back and how you would get a job back and so on. Obviously, coming back must have been a big. The world had changed completely. You know, the new fascism had vanished, but this new threat had emerged with Russia and the Cold War and everything like that. Did you?
Well, of course, that really hadn't started then, hadn't it, when I come back?
I suppose there was a period of camaraderie, was there?
Oh,
Euphoria.
But nobody knew except Churchill and these people up the stairs what was going to happen with communism.
Yeah.
So, and I think to myself, I've done my stint, I'll never be called up again. But 3 years later, in 1950, Korea was on the go.
Aye.
Started Korea.
Yeah.
And I got a notice through the door one time, such and such, to go up to the medical centre. I had to go for another medical. I was called up for 2 weeks training. It was called Z training. Because this thing was escalating out in the Far East, I was thinking, oh well, certain people over a certain age, but I was still young at that time, I was about 24. I thought, God, don't tell me I'm going away again.
Oh dear.
I was just beginning to enjoy myself. I was sent down to Duntunnel for 2 weeks training. And it was money thrown away. They paid us for it. And they got down there and wireless operator, sitting on a wireless set that was obsolete before the war started.
Aye.
All the modern ones that we had out there, the lighter ones, the ones you could carry, they had this big number 11 set with this size and a ton weight in the back of a lorry.
Mhm.
And a sergeant, being a gun sergeant, he was supposed to have taken signallers. He didn't know, he'd never been in one before, never been a signaller. So nothing ever happened to that. Although Korea did come and the boys were sent out there for a couple of years alone.
I think, do we need to change the tape, Johnny, now? We'll just, we're running out of tape
Aye.
here, so we'll